Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is treading a careful diplomatic line as he pays a historic visit to Ukraine amid escalating tensions with Russia. The trip comes just a month after he met President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, which attracted fierce criticism from Ukrainian President Volodomyr Zelenskyy. Mr. Modi and Mr. Zelenskyy met in Kyiv today for discussions on defense cooperation, the economy, as well as science and technology developments. The pair's meeting is also being viewed as an attempt by India to strike a more neutral stance as a global peacemaker, alongside its traditionally close economic and defense ties with Moscow. Now, the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Kyiv also falls at a critical juncture in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian forces are continuing their incursion into Russia's Kursk region, with Russian troops making steady progress in Ukraine's east. For more, Megumi Lim joins us live from Kyiv. Megumi, first, it's been called a historic visit, also a very tricky one for Modi after his visit to Moscow. Talk us through the discussion points that are on the table.
Well, Prime Minister Modi, ahead of his visit, did say he was looking forward to building on the conversations that he's already had with President Zelenskyy about strengthening bilateral cooperation between Ukraine and India. This is something they'll be discussing today. Ukraine and India are trying to strengthen cooperation in the areas of agriculture, of food industry, of culture, and also in the areas of defense. India does have quite a large inventory of military equipment with its origins in both Russia and Ukraine. And according to some reports, we've seen Ukrainian companies and Indian companies expressing interest in forming a joint venture. So these are some of the things that Ukrainian leader and the Indian leader will be discussing today. Now, unlike Russia and India's bilateral trade volume, Ukraine and India has not really had strong bilateral ties over the years. Last year, Russia and India's bilateral trade volume reached a record high of $65 billion, whereas for India and Ukraine, in the first half of this year alone, it's only reached $1 billion. So indeed, the two countries are trying to boost trade, trying to strengthen economic ties. Now, Prime Minister Modi also said that he was looking forward to sharing some of his perspectives on peace. I believe this is something both Zelenskyy and Modi will be discussing as well, to try to find a resolution to the war. Prime Minister Modi has been pushing for Kyiv to find a diplomatic solution to this ongoing war with Russia.
Yeah, Modi bringing his very specific brand of diplomacy to Ukraine. Why is his trip so significant to Ukraine?
This is indeed a very important trip for Ukraine. Ukraine has been trying to shore up the support of more countries, sort of neutral countries, also countries that have that lean closer to Russia, and also countries in the global south, in which Ukraine views India as a major powerful player in the region. And already this visit is considered a diplomatic success for Ukraine. This is the most high-profile visit to Kyiv by a leader of a country that has close ties to Russia. And it is important for Ukraine to have that happen as it pursues peace, re-establishing peace in its country. It is important for the Indian Prime Minister to see Ukraine with his own eyes. Today, President Zelenskyy and Prime Minister Modi visited an exhibition honoring the memories of children who were killed in this war. And I don't think this is any coincidence, considering what happened, what took place a few weeks ago, where Modi was in Moscow, seen hugging President Putin. On the same day, a missile slammed into Ukraine's largest children's hospital. So Ukraine is also trying to drive home that simple message of how devastating the war has been and how urgent it is to try to bring an end to this ongoing war. And so this is something that the two leaders will be discussing for Ukraine. They have already shifted their stance from trying to find an absolute battlefield victory to seeking a diplomatic solution to the war. And for that, they need the support of as many countries as possible.
Live from Kyiv, Megumi Lim, thank you for that. Now, let's take a closer look at what Megumi was just telling us. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trips to Kyiv and just last month Moscow, both bringing a full circle moment for the South Asian country's famed non-alignment approach to geopolitics. Now, the policy allows the nation access to joint military exercises, enter into commercial and trade agreements, as well as lend aid and support, while preventing great power access to sensitive defense facilities. India and Ukraine have more than 3 decades of established relations. Mr. Modi's trip is seen as part of efforts to ramp up engagement with Europe in the past decade, particularly in underserved regions in Central and Eastern Europe. Experts say he is likely to push for an end to the war in Ukraine. Though bilateral ties are young, India operates a large inventory of military equipment of Ukrainian origin, with reports of Ukraine having several cutting-edge systems and technologies, many of which are battle-tested. Defense trade between Delhi and Kyiv continued until just before 2022. Now, in comparison, India and Russia have 77 years of diplomatic relations with deep-rooted defense and strategic ties since the Cold War era. Moscow remains a key supplier of weapons to Delhi, which maintains one of the largest militaries in the world. Up to 70% of India's conventional military hardware is Soviet or post-Russian origin. And in the last 2 decades, Russia has supplied around 65% of India's weapons purchases. Now, bilateral trade between India and Russia, meanwhile, soaring to $57 billion last year. Another key bridge linking Delhi to Moscow is oil, with Russian crude oil making up 36% of India's total oil imports in the 2023 to 2024 financial year. India is the second biggest importer of Russian oil, just behind China, both benefiting from steeply discounted prices following subsequent Western sanctions on Russian crude amid the war in Ukraine. India says it's helping to keep global prices down by buying up Russian oil.